Let me tell you something. I've been pulling things out of the ocean my whole life. Nets, crab pots, once a refrigerator, don't ask. A few times people. Living people, dead people, people who weren't sure which one they were yet. But I never pulled out anything like the three I found that morning. And I've never been able to stop thinking about them since. My name doesn't matter much for this. People around the docks call me Pano. Short for something my grandmother used to call me, a Greek thing, doesn't translate clean. I run a longliner out of a little port town you've never heard of, the kind of place where the gas station closes at 8 and the whole town smells like diesel and salt. I'm 51. My hands look like 70. That's fishing for you. I'm telling you all this so you understand I'm not the type to make things up. I don't believe in sea monsters. I don't believe in ghosts. I believe in tide charts and weather radios and the fact that the ocean does not care about you, not even a little. But what happened on those 3 days changed how I think about people, about what a person can hold inside them and never show. So sit down, stay with me. This one's long and it earns it. It started on a Tuesday in the dead part of the year, October. The water had gone that flat pewter color it gets when the season's turning, when the warm currents are pulling out and the cold ones are sliding in underneath like a second floor in a house. We've been out 4 days already, working a bank about 90 miles offshore. Bad fishing. The kind of trip where you start doing the math in your head, fuel against catch, and the math keeps coming out wrong. My crew was 3 men plus me. Tomas, my first mate, who'd been with me 11 years and could gut a fish faster than you could blink. Big Kelly, who came up from the islands and never wore a shirt no matter how cold it got, which I never understood. And a kid named Ray's 19, on his first long run, still throwing up over the rail every other morning and trying to hide it. We were tired, we were broke, we wanted to go home. That's the thing about the sea, though. It always waits until you want to go home. It was Kelly who spotted it, just before sunrise. He was up on the bow doing nothing, the way he did, staring out at the gray. And he goes quiet in this way that wasn't his normal quiet. "Pano," he says, just that. I came out with my coffee. The horizon was that mix of dark and not dark, where the sky and the water are the same and you can't find the line between them. And way out, maybe half a mile, there was a shape. Now out there, a shape is never nothing. A shape is debris, or a buoy that broke loose, or a whale, or trouble. You learn to look at shapes very carefully. I got the binoculars. My hands weren't steady from the cold, and it took me a second to find it. It was orange, faded orange, the kind of orange that used to be bright a long time ago, a life raft, one of the inflatable kind, the round ones with the little canopy, and it was low in the water, riding heavy. "Cut the engine," I said, then louder, "Cut it, cut it." The boat went quiet. You don't realize how loud a diesel is until it stops. Suddenly you could hear everything. The water slapping the hull, a gull somewhere, Rays climbing up the ladder to see what was going on. And then across that half-mile of flat morning water, faint, we heard a voice. Not a scream. That's what got me. It wasn't a person screaming for help the way you'd expect. It was a single word called out steady and even 3 times with a gap between each one. "Vessel. Pause. Vessel. Pause. Vessel." Like somebody reporting a fact, not begging, reporting. We swung the boat around and went to them. I want to tell you what we saw when we came up alongside, because I've described it 100 times at the bar, and I still don't think I do it right. There were 3 of them in that raft, and the raft was meant for 4, maybe 6 in a squeeze, so they weren't crowded, but they were a mess. Sunburnt past red into something gray and cracked, lips split open. One of the men had a wound on his shoulder wrapped in a strip of fabric that had gone black and stiff. They smelled. Lord, they smelled. Like salt water and infection and 3 days of being alive without meaning to be. 2 men and a woman. The 2 men were big. Even half dead, you could see it. Wide through the shoulders, hands like mine but younger, the kind of build you don't get from a gym, you get it from carrying heavy things up hills for years. One had a beard going patchy. The other was clean-shaven, or had been, with a face that didn't move much. And the woman, she was the one who'd been calling out. I knew it the second I saw her, before anyone said anything, because she was the only one of the three sitting fully upright. The men were slumped, conserving, but she sat up against the side of the raft with her knees pulled in and her eyes open and moving, and even sunburnt and half-dead she was watching us the way you'd watch a dog you weren't sure about. She was maybe 35. Hard to tell. Small compared to the men. But there was something in the way she held herself, even then, even like that, that made you sit up straighter yourself. "How many of you?" she said. Her voice was wrecked sandpaper, but the words came out clipped and clear. "How many aboard your vessel?" I blinked at her. "What?" "Crew," she said. "How many?" "4," I said. "Just 4, me and 3. We're a fishing boat. You're safe. You're—" "Copy," she said. And then she closed her eyes just for a second, and I watched something go out of her shoulders. Not relief exactly. More like a guard going off duty. Like she'd been holding a door shut for 3 days and somebody had finally come to take the next watch. Only then did she let us help them up. Getting them aboard was its own ordeal. They couldn't really stand. Kelly, I basically carried the bearded one over his shoulder like a sack of rice. Tomas and I got the other man. And the woman, she tried to climb up herself. She actually tried, got one hand on the rail and her whole arm shook like a leaf and she just couldn't. The body had run out. Ray's reached down and she let him pull her up and I saw her hate it. I saw her hate needing the help, even half dead. We laid them out on the deck on the spare nets. Wrapped them in everything we had, foil blankets, my own coat, a tarp. Ray's ran for water and I had to grab him. Slow, little sips. You'll kill them giving them too much. Because that's a real thing, you drown a dehydrated man by being too kind too fast. The bearded one was the worst. He was barely there. Eyes rolling, mumbling. The shoulder wound was the problem, you could smell it, it had gone bad. The clean-shaven one was better, conscious, watching us with those flat eyes that didn't give anything away. And the woman watched everything. Even ruined, she watched. She watched how we handled her 2 men. She watched my hands when I checked the bearded one's pulse. I felt like I was being graded. "You a nurse?" Tomas asked her while he was working a foil blanket around her shoulders. Just trying to be friendly, just talking. She looked at him, a long beat. "No," she said. And that was all. No and nothing after it, the kind of no that closes a door. Tomas glanced at me. I gave him the look that means leave it. I got on the radio. Mayday relay position, 3 survivors, request medevac, 1 critical. The Coast Guard came back fast, they always do for this, and started running through their questions. Names, nationalities, vessel of origin. I turned to the 3 of them. "They want names," I said. "For the report. You from a boat that went down. You got an EPIRB, a beacon, anything. They'll want to know what to look for." The 2 men said nothing. The bearded one couldn't. The clean-shaven one just looked at the woman. That was the first time I noticed it. The way both men, even half-dead, even with one of them barely conscious, deferred to her. Not in a romantic way. Not a husband-wife way. It was something else. When the question landed, both of them looked to her, the way soldiers look at the one who's going to decide. She propped herself up on one elbow. It cost her. I could see it cost her. "Tell them," she said, slow, careful, "that there are 3 personnel recovered. That we are U.S. nationals. That we request our consulate and our command be notified, and that we will not be providing names or unit information over an open channel." I just stared at her. "Command," I said. She held my eyes. "Just tell them that, word for word, they'll know what to do with it." So I did. I keyed the mic and I read it back near enough. 3 U.S. nationals, requesting consulate and command notification, declining further information on the open channel. And here's the thing. The Coast Guard radio operator, who'd been chatty and professional and exactly what you'd expect, went quiet for a second. A real pause, and when she came back her voice had changed. Just a little, more careful. "Copy," the operator said. "Stand by, we are rerouting your tasking. Maintain position. Assets en route. And a pause, provide those 3 personnel every comfort you can. Acknowledge." "Acknowledged," I said. And I put the mic down and I looked at my crew, and Tomas looked at me, and even Reyes the kid had gone still, because we'd all heard the change in the operator's voice, and we all understood the same thing at the same time without saying it. These 3 weren't shipwrecked tourists. These 3 weren't a sailing family who hit a reef. Whatever they were, the system knew about them, and the system had just gone quiet. The bearded one took a bad turn around midday. His fever came up fast, the way infection does once it really gets going. He started shaking, then talking, the kind of talk that isn't to anybody, just the brain firing off in the dark. Words I didn't follow. Numbers. He kept saying a number over and over, and at first I thought it was nonsense. 4112, he said. 4112, held it. Wind's wrong, ma'am, wind's 4112. The woman moved. I'll never forget how fast she moved, even ruined as she was. She'd been lying on her back, conserving every ounce of strength, and the second he started saying that, she dragged herself across the deck on her elbows, hand over hand, until she was beside him. She got her face right down next to his. "Hey," she said, quiet, different voice than she'd used with us, softer but with steel under it. "Hey, Rook, you're not on the glass, you're off the glass. You hear me? Stand down, you're done, I've got it." 4112, he mumbled. "I know," she said. "I know you did. Best I ever saw. Now shut up and rest, that's an order." And he settled, like that. The shaking didn't stop, but the talking did, and he kind of folded into himself and went somewhere quieter. She stayed next to him, put her hand flat on his chest over the foil like she was keeping him from floating off. I was standing right there. I heard all of it, and I didn't understand it, not yet, but I understood that I just watched something private, something I wasn't supposed to see. The way she said "off the glass," the way she said "I've got it." The number stayed with me too, 4112. I didn't know what it meant. I'd find out. We all would. And it would shut 3 trained men up cold, which I still can't fully explain to this day. The clean-shaven one finally spoke to me direct in the afternoon. He'd gotten some water in him, some sugar. Color was coming back. He motioned me over with 2 fingers, slow, the way you'd call a waiter you respected. "Captain," he said, voice like gravel, "thank you, the boat coming about, the way you handled it." He nodded toward the bearded man. "And him, you didn't have to do all that." "Anyone would," I said. "No," he said flat, "they wouldn't." We sat there a second, the boat rocking. The bearded ones labored, breathing the loudest thing on deck. "That number," I said before I could stop myself. "He keeps saying it, 4,000 something, what is that?" The clean-shaven man's face didn't change, but his eyes went to the woman, who was asleep now, or pretending to be, curled against the gunwale with her hand still resting on her teammate's chest. He looked back at me, and he almost smiled, almost. "That's hers," he said. "Not mine to tell, but I'll say this, Captain." He leaned his head back against the netting and closed his eyes. "When you find out, you're not going to believe it. And when you do believe it, you're going to wonder how somebody that small carried something that heavy and never told a soul." Then he went asleep too, just like that, trusting us. 3 of the most dangerous-looking people I'd ever had on my deck, and they'd all gone to sleep in my care like children, because somewhere out on that water they'd decided we were safe, and people like them, I'd learned, didn't make that decision lightly. That night the wind came up. Not a storm, not really, but a chop, a mean little chop that made the boat work and made the 3 of them suffer. The bearded man worst of all. His fever was a furnace now. I knew, the way you know things at sea, that he didn't have a lot of road left if the medevac didn't come. I was at the wheel, holding us steady, watching the radar when the woman came up. She shouldn't have been able to. She'd been the strongest of the three in spirit, but her body was as wrecked as theirs. But there she was, hauling herself up the ladder into the wheelhouse, one rung at a time, and she stood in the doorway swaying with the boat and looked at me. "He's bad," she said. "I know," I said. "How long till they reach us?" I checked. "Couple hours if the weather holds. Helicopter can't fly in this. They're sending a fast boat first, then a transfer." She nodded slow, took it in, made some calculation behind her eyes. Then she lowered herself down onto the little bench in the wheelhouse, careful, like her whole body was made of glass, and she stared out the windscreen at the dark. We didn't talk for a while. I figured she didn't want to. People who have been through it, they're not always looking for conversation. But then, quiet, not looking at me, she said, "You heard him, the number." "Yeah." "You want to know what it is?" "Only if you want to tell me," I said. "You don't owe me anything. You don't owe me a name, even. I just pulled you out of the water. That's the job." She turned her head and looked at me then, long, and something shifted in her face. Maybe it was the dark, the way the dark makes people honest. Maybe it was that her friend was dying on my deck and she needed to put something down before it broke her. Maybe she just decided I was safe, the way she decided about the boat that morning. "My job," she said slowly, "is to do one thing better than almost anyone alive, and to never ever talk about it." The boat rose and fell. Spray hit the glass. "For 9 years," she said, "I have not told a single person outside my unit what I actually do. Not my mother, not the men she stopped. Not anyone. You want to know why those two out there look at me the way they do? It's not rank. We barely have rank where we operate. It's because of what's behind that number that Rook keeps saying." She looked back out at the dark. 4,112 meters, she said. "That's the distance. That's the shot." I didn't say anything. I didn't really understand yet what I was hearing. "You know how far that is?" she asked, still quiet. "Most people, the best in the world, the absolute best, they top out around 3,500, the records you can read about, the ones with names attached in the magazines. A breath. Mine doesn't have a name attached. Mine isn't in any magazine. Mine doesn't officially exist. But those two men out there were spotting for me the day I did it. They watched it through the glass. And that's why, half dead in a raft for 3 days, they still did everything I told them." She closed her eyes. "And now you know more than my own mother," she said. "Congratulations, Captain. Don't make me regret it." I stood at that wheel and I held my dying engine steady against a black ocean, and I realized I had absolutely no idea who was on my boat. But I was about to find out exactly what it cost her. And that part, God, that part, is where it really begins. The fast boat came around 2 in the morning. I saw it on the radar first, a hard little blip closing on us at a speed nothing in the civilian world moves at night in chop like that. Then I saw the light, low to the water, swinging back and forth as the boat took the swells. It came up on us out of the black like something that had been waiting just over the edge of the world the whole time. It wasn't Coast Guard. I want to be clear about that because it matters. A Coast Guard boat, I know what it looks like. The hull markings, the orange stripe, the lights. This wasn't that. This was a long, low, dark gray thing with no markings at all, riding hard and fast, and the men who came over the side of my boat when it pulled alongside didn't wear Coast Guard either. They wore black. No names. No flags, just gear and the kind of quiet competence that you feel before you can name it. There were 4 of them. They came aboard without a word, 3 of them straight to the survivors, 1 of them straight to me. "Captain," he said. He didn't ask my name. "We're taking custody of your 3 passengers. We're grateful for the recovery. I need to ask you some questions and I need you to answer them straight. And then we're going to leave you a little better off than we found you." "Who are you?" I asked. He looked at me, not unkind, but not soft either. "I'm the people who come when somebody makes the call your passenger made this morning. he said. That's as much as you get. Now, did any of the three say anything to you about who they are, where they came from, what they were doing out here? And here's where I want to tell you the truth about myself, because I've thought about it 1,000 times since. I lied. I looked that man in the eye and I said, no, nothing. Girl told us they were U.S. nationals and to call their command, that's it. The two men were too far gone to talk. I don't fully know why I did it. She trusted me. She told me the things she hadn't told her own mother, in the dark, at the wheel, with her friend dying 10 feet away. And some part of me felt like it would be a betrayal to hand that over to a man in black with no name, even if he was on her side. Especially because I couldn't be sure he was on her side. Out there, you learn the hard way that not everybody who shows up to help is helping. The man studied me. He had eyes like the clean-shaven survivor, that flat, reading look, and I think he knew I was lying, I really do, but he also, I think, understood why, and he let it go. All right, he said, good man. They moved fast. The bearded one, the one she'd called Rook, they had him onto a stretcher and were running fluids into his arm before I could blink, the kind of medical work that happens when people have done it under fire 100 times and their hands just know. One of them was reading off numbers, vitals, and I heard the word sepsis. And I heard another one say, we've got maybe a window, let's not waste it. And they had him over the rail and into the gray boat in under 3 minutes. The clean-shaven one walked across on his own, wouldn't be carried. He was barely standing, but he walked, and one of the men in black put an arm around him and walked with him, not holding him up exactly just there, and I heard the man in black say, low, welcome back, brother, and the clean-shaven one said something I couldn't hear, and they both kind of laughed, this exhausted, broken little laugh, and it hit me harder than anything had all day. These men knew each other. This was a family. A strange, dangerous, silent family, and it had just gotten 3 of its own back from the dead. The woman was last. She came up out of the deck where she'd been with Rook, and she stood, and she looked around my boat one more time. At the nets, at the wheelhouse, at my crew who were lined up along the rail watching, Ray's the kid with his mouth open, Kelly with his arms crossed, Tomas just nodding slowly to himself like he was filing the whole thing away to tell his grandchildren. She came over to me. Captain Pano, she said. She'd gotten my name from the others. I'm going to tell you something and I need you to hear it. Okay. What I said to you tonight, at the wheel. I never heard a word, I said. I don't even remember being at the wheel tonight. I had a long night, memories bad. She looked at me for a second, and then for the first time since I'd pulled her out of the water she smiled, just a little, a crack in all that stone, and in that smile I saw just for a flash what she might have been like if her life had gone any other way, a young woman, tired, funny maybe underneath, somebody's daughter. You're a bad liar, she said. I heard you tell my you didn't know anything. I'm a great liar, I said. I lied to him just fine. I'm only bad at it with you because you're scarier than he is. She actually laughed at that. One short rough bark of a laugh. And then she put her hand out and I shook it, and her grip was like a closing vice, even ruined, even half dead. Thank you for my men, she said. I don't care about me. I'd have made it or I wouldn't, but you got my men out of the water. I won't forget it. What's your name? I asked. Just for me, not for any report. I'll never say it. She held my eyes. Did that calculation again, the one I'd watched her do all day, weighing, measuring. And then she gave me something. They call me Ren, she said. Not her real name, I knew that. A call sign, probably, but it was something. It was hers to give, and she gave it to me. Ren, I said, I'll remember you. I know you will, she said. That's the problem. And then she went over the side into the gray boat, the last of the 3, and the men in black cast off, and that low, dark hull pulled away from me and accelerated into the black, and within 30 seconds it was a light, and within a minute it was nothing, and I was alone again on my own boat with my own crew and a deck full of bloody nets and foil blankets, and the only proof any of it had happened at all. The man in black hadn't been lying about leaving us better off, by the way. When the sun came up, I found a sealed waterproof case wedged behind the bait freezer where one of them must have stashed it. Inside was cash. American dollars, banded, more than my whole trip would have earned in a good year, let alone the bust we'd been having. And a card, just a phone number, no name, and 3 words handwritten on the back. For the inconvenience. Rays wanted to know what we were going to tell people back at the dock. Nothing, I said. We had a bad trip and we came home early. That's the whole story. But Pano. That's the whole story, Rays. And it was for a while. But here's the thing about the sea, and about people, and about secrets. They don't stay down. You weight them and you sink them and you tell yourself they're gone, and then a year goes by or 2, and the current shifts and up they come. It was about 14 months later that the rest of it found me. I was in a VA bar 2 states over, of all places. I'd driven up for a funeral, an old fishing buddy of mine, Navy man back in his day, and after the service a bunch of us ended up in this little dim veterans club drinking the cheap stuff and telling lies about the dead man like you do. And there was an older guy at the end of the bar, gray, crew cut, missing 2 fingers on his right hand, the kind of old that's been hard used. We got to talking. Turned out he'd been a Navy man too, a long career, the deep kind that he wouldn't say much about, which I'd learned to recognize. I don't know what made me do it. The whiskey, maybe, the funeral, the 14 months of holding a thing I couldn't tell anyone. I said, let me ask you something. Hypothetical. You ever hear of a sniper shot, 4,112 meters? The old man went still. I mean still. The way Kelly I had gone still on the bow that morning. He set his glass down very carefully on the bar. And he looked at me, and his eyes weren't friendly anymore. They were doing that reading thing, the same look I'd seen on every one of those people on my deck. Where, he said, very quiet, did you hear that number? I told you, hypothetical. It's not a hypothetical, he said. There's no such thing as a hypothetical 4112. You either heard it from somebody who was there, or you didn't hear it at all. So I'll ask you one more time, friend, and then we're either going to have a real conversation or you're going to get up and walk away. Where did you hear it? I looked at this old man, and I made the same call I'd made on my deck with the man in black, except backwards. I pulled 3 people out of the ocean, I said. 14 months ago, 2 men and a woman, they'd been adrift 3 days. One of the men had a fever, he was dying, and in his fever he kept saying that number. And the woman, I stopped. The woman told me at the wheel in the dark. She told me it was hers. The old man stared at me for a long, long time. And then his eyes did something I did not expect. They filled up. This old, hard-used Navy man with 2 fingers gone, sitting in a dim bar, he got tears standing in his eyes and he had to look down at the bar to keep them there. You met Ren, he said. It wasn't a question. His name, he told me, was Holly's. He'd been a chief, way back, and then a senior chief, and then something they don't print job titles for, and he'd spent the last years before he retired as a kind of instructor and den mother to people like Ren. People in the part of the service that doesn't have a part. He wouldn't say the unit. I didn't ask twice. I trained her, he said, not at the start. By the time she got to me, she was already, he shook his head. You don't train somebody to be what she was. You just try not to ruin it. She came to me already the best natural shooter I'd seen in 30 years, and the thing about her, the thing that made her her, wasn't the eyes or the hands. Plenty of people have eyes and hands. It was the stillness. He turned his glass on the bar. You ever watch somebody who can be completely, totally still? He asked. Not frozen, not tense, just gone. Heart rate down, breathing slow, the whole world narrowed to one thing for hours if she had to. Most people can't do it for a minute. She could do it all day. We used to say Ren could lie in one spot so long the grass forgot she was there. 4,112 meters, I said. Is that real? She said the records people know about are around 3,500. They are, Holly said. The ones people know about, the named ones, the verified ones, the ones the magazines write up. He looked at me. What she did doesn't get written up. It can't. Because of where it was and who it was and what it was for and the fact that officially it never happened and she was never there. You understand, that's not a record that gets a record. That's a thing maybe 40 people on Earth know is real. And now you're one of them. And I'm going to tell you the rest of it. Because somebody pulled her out of the ocean, and that means somebody ought to know what she carried. He finished his drink, signaled for 2 more. It's not a happy story, he said. I want you to know that going in. The shot was the easy part. It's everything after the shot that nearly killed her, and I don't mean the raft. And then Holly's told me about the day of the shot. And that's part 3. I'm going to tell you the day of the shot the way Holly's told it to me, in that dim bar, 2 whiskeys in, with his 2-fingered hand wrapped around the glass and his eyes somewhere 1,000 miles and 10 years away. He told it slow. He'd clearly told it before, but only to himself. You could hear that. The way a man tells a thing he's worn smooth from turning it over in the dark. I'm not going to pretend I got every word right, but I got it close, and I've kept it close ever since, because somebody asked me to remember, and I'm a man who keeps his promises to people I pull out of the ocean. Here's how it went. It was a mountain country. Holly's wouldn't name it and I won't guess. High and cold and thin on air, the kind of place where the sun is bright and the shade will still freeze you, where every breath comes a little short and your body never quite catches up. The kind of altitude that messes with a bullet as much as it messes with a man, because thin air means less drag, and less drag means a round flies flatter and farther, and you have to do all your math over again from scratch. There was a man they needed gone. Holly's wouldn't say who. Just that he was the kind of man whose continued breathing got a lot of other people killed, and the kind of man who never, ever exposed himself, who'd learned a long time ago to live behind walls and glass and other people's bodies. They'd tried to reach him other ways. The other ways had failed, and the failures had cost lives, good ones. So it came down to this. A window. One window in one building on one ridge, for 1 hour on one specific morning, when this man was known to take his coffee and look out at the valley because it was the one moment of the day he let himself feel safe. And the only place from which that window could be seen, the only place with the angle, with the line, with the cover to get in and out, was a slope on the far side of the valley, 4,112 meters away. You have to understand what that distance means, Holly said. People hear a number it doesn't land, so let me make it land. At that range, the bullet is in the air for almost 9 seconds. 9 seconds. You pull the trigger, and you wait, and you wait. The way you wait for thunder after lightning. And somewhere in those 9 seconds, the round is rising up over 1,000 feet into the sky and coming back down. And the man is drinking his coffee not knowing that 9 seconds ago, on the other side of the world practically, somebody decided he was done. 9 seconds, I said. In 9 seconds, Holly said, the Earth turns. You're shooting at a target that's moving because the planet under it is moving and you have to account for that. The Coriolis. You're shooting through air that's a different temperature and pressure at the top of the arc than at the bottom. You're shooting across a valley that has its own weather, its own winds, 3, 4 different winds at different heights, all of them pushing the round a little. And a little times 4,000 meters is not a little anymore. It's the difference between his head and the empty wall behind him. He held up his glass, looked through the whiskey at the light. The wind, he said. That's what your dying man kept saying, isn't it, in the raft? Wind's wrong, ma'am. I felt the back of my neck go cold. Yeah, I said, how'd you? Because that's the whole story, Holly said. That's the entire story right there. The wind was wrong. They'd planned it for weeks. Wren and her 2 spotters, and now I understood that the bearded one, Rook, and the clean-shaven one, Those were her spotters, her men, the ones I'd pulled out of the water. They'd built the whole thing around the morning weather, because the valley had a pattern. The wind settled at dawn before the sun got to work, and there was a window of maybe 40 minutes when the air across that valley would be as still and readable as it ever got. They went in 2 nights early, climbed in on foot the hard way, the way that doesn't show up on anything, got into a hide on the slope, a little fold in the rock that Rook had picked off imagery just barely deep enough to hide 3 people and a long gun if they lay flat and didn't move. And they didn't move. For 2 days, Holly said, they barely moved. You don't at that range and that exposure. You become part of the mountain or you die. They pissed where they lay. They ate cold. They watched. And the whole time, Holly said, she's reading the valley, 2 days of it, watching how the smoke from the village rises, watching the grass, watching a flag on a pole down by the man's compound, the way it lifts and drops, watching a hawk ride the thermals to learn where the air goes up and where it comes down. She's building a map in her head of every current of air between her and that window, and she's updating it every minute for 2 days because the map is the whole shot. The rifle's just a tool. The map in her head, that's the weapon. The morning came. The man came to his window, right on schedule with his coffee like he'd done 1,000 mornings. And the wind was wrong. It came up out of nowhere, Holly said. A gust pattern that wasn't in the 2 days of data, some change up high, some weather sliding in early. The valley that was supposed to be still at dawn wasn't still. And she's lying there with the man in her glass finally after weeks of work and 2 days flat on a freezing rock. The 1 window in the 1 hour on the 1 morning and the air between them just turned to garbage, switching, gusting, unreadable. He set the glass down. And here's the thing about a moment like that, he said. Most shooters, even great ones, they take it anyway, because the pressure is enormous. The window's closing. People died to get to this morning. You've waited weeks. Every cell in your body is screaming, take it, you'll never get it again. And so they take the shot into bad wind and they miss, and the man goes behind his wall forever, and everybody who died to set it up died for nothing. What did she do? I asked. Holly smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. She didn't take it, he said. This is the part Holly's told slowest of all. Rook's on the spotting scope, he said. He's got the data, he's calling it. And he's a pro, one of the best, but even he's saying, take it, we've got him, send it. Because Rook can see the windows closing too. And the clean-shaven one, Vasquez will call him, he's on security, watching their backs, and he's whispering the same thing. Ma'am, we're gonna lose him. And she just lies there, still, doing the math nobody else can do, watching the grass, watching the smoke, feeling the gusts come across her own position, counting them, finding the rhythm in the chaos. Because that's the thing, even a wind that looks random isn't fully random. It pulses. It breathes. If you're still enough and patient enough and good enough, you can find the half-second of lull inside the storm. But you have to be willing to wait for it. You have to be willing to let the window close on the bad air and bet your whole mission, everybody's sacrifice, on the chance that there's one clean breath of stillness coming before the man finishes his coffee and walks away. Holly's looked at me. That's the loneliest thing I can imagine, he said. Lonelier than the raft, lying on that rock. With 2 men you'd die for begging you to shoot, knowing that if you wait and you're wrong, it's all for nothing and it's your fault. And if you shoot now and you're wrong, it's all for nothing and it's your fault. Either way, it's your fault. Either way, you carry it. And nobody can help you. Nobody can make the call but you. 40 people on Earth could maybe even understand the math, but only one of them was lying on that rock, and it was her. How long? I asked. My voice came out funny. How long did she wait? Rook timed it after, Holly said. From the moment she could have taken the first shot, the bad one, to the moment she actually fired. 40 seconds. That doesn't sound like... 40 seconds, Holly said. With the most important target of the decade in your scope and 2 brothers begging you to shoot and the window dying in front of you. You go lie on a cold rock sometime and hold absolutely still and count out 40 seconds while somebody screams at you to move. Then come tell me it doesn't sound like much. He told me she fired between 2 gusts. There was a lull. She'd felt it coming, the way she'd learned to feel them in 2 days of reading that valley, a fold of stillness moving across the air toward her, and she'd waited and waited, past the point any sane person would wait. And at the exact moment the lull arrived over her position and reached its way across the whole 4,000 meters of valley. In that one held breath of the morning, she sent it. 9 seconds. Rook said it was the longest 9 seconds of his life, Hollis told me. He's on the glass watching the man through the scope, and the round is up in the sky somewhere, and there's nothing anybody can do now. It's done, it's flying, and you just wait. The man takes a sip of his coffee, sets the cup down, looks out at the valley, at the mountains, maybe right at the slope she's lying on, not knowing. And then Holly stopped. And then it arrives, he said quietly. And it's over, and the valley's still. And nobody for 4,000 meters heard a thing, because the sound's so far behind the bullet it doesn't matter anymore. The man just wasn't there anymore. The way a candle isn't there anymore. And then 3 people on a cold rock started the very long, very dangerous business of becoming part of the mountain again and getting out alive. He turned his glass slow on the bar. That's the shot, he said. 4,112 meters. The one nobody will ever write up. The one your dying man couldn't stop saying, because I promise you, he's never stopped saying it inside his own head, not for 1 day since. None of them have. I sat there a long time. The bar was quiet around us. Somewhere a TV was playing low. You said the shot was the easy part, I finally said. You said it was everything after that nearly killed her, and you said you didn't mean the raft. Hollis nodded slow. I didn't, he said. The raft was 3 days, the other thing was 9 years, and it's the part nobody tells because there's no medal for it and no record for it, and you can't even talk about it. He finished his whiskey. You want the rest. It's the part that actually matters. The shot's just the thing people would clap for. What came after the shot is the thing that makes me cry into my drink in a bar at my age, in front of a fisherman I just met. I want the rest, I said. Then I'll need one more, he said, and pushed his glass forward. And he told me about the silence. Hollis got his 3rd whiskey. He didn't drink it right away. He just held it and looked at it, and for a while he didn't say anything at all, and I let him not say anything, because I've learned that the things worth hearing usually come after the silence, not before it. You want to know why they went quiet, he finally said. Those 3. Why a man can do the greatest shot of her life and then nobody ever says a word about it again. You think it's rules, classification, keeping the secret. Isn't it? That's part of it, he said, but that's the small part. The rules are easy, you just don't talk. Anybody cannot talk. He turned the glass. The hard part isn't keeping the secret from the world. The hard part is keeping it from yourself. And that's the part that broke her, slow, over years. The way water breaks a stone. Here's the thing he made me understand, and I'd never thought about it before that night, and I've never been able to stop thinking about it since. When a normal person does the hardest thing they'll ever do, runs into a fire, saves a drowning kid, whatever it is, they get to come home and have it be real. People know. There's a story. Their kids know their mom is the woman who did that thing. At the funeral, somebody stands up and says, she did this, she was this. The hard thing becomes part of who they are, out loud in the light, where other people can hold it with them. Wren never got any of that. Not for the shot, not for any of it. She did the most extraordinary thing a human being can do with a rifle, Holly said. And she went home, and her mother said, how was your trip? And she said, fine, Mom, just training. She went to her sister's wedding 2 months later and danced and smiled and held the baby, and a man at the reception asked her what she did for the Navy, and she said, supply, logistics, boring desk stuff. And he said, oh, and lost interest, the way people do. And she stood there in a nice dress holding a champagne glass she couldn't even drink because she was on call. And inside her was this thing, this enormous thing, that she could never, ever set down in front of another living soul. He shook his head. You carry one of those, fine, he said. Everybody carries one or two, but she didn't have one. She had years of them. The shot was the biggest, but it was one stone in a wall. Every operation, everything she'd done, every brother she'd lost, and she lost some. You don't do that work and not lose some. All of it went into the same place, the place with no door, the place she couldn't show her mother or her sister or anyone she ever dated or any therapist who didn't have the clearance to hear it. And there aren't many of those. That's why she said it, I said, half to myself. At the wheel, now you know more than my own mother. Hollis looked at me sharp. She said that to you? Yeah. He sat back. Something moved across his face. Then you have to understand what that was, he said. That wasn't her being dramatic. That was her, for the first time in 9 years, maybe ever, setting one of the stones down in front of another human being. On your boat. In the dark. With Rook dying. She just spent 3 days at seashore. She was going to die out there, and she didn't tell you because she wanted you to be impressed. She told you because she was looking at the very real chance that she was about to die, and she could not bear the thought of going into the water with all of it still locked inside her, where it would just disappear, like it never happened, like she never happened. The bar was very quiet now. She picked you, Holly said, to be the one human being outside the wall who'd know she was real. Do you understand what you were on that boat? You weren't a fisherman who rescued her. You were a witness. The only one she'd ever allowed herself. You were where she put it down so that if she died, it wouldn't die with her completely. I had to look away from him. I'm not ashamed to say it. A man my age in a bar. Now, Holly said, why the men went silent, the 2 you pulled out, and the rest of them, that's a different thing, and it's almost worse, and I think about it more than I think about her because I knew those men better. He took a real drink this time. When you spot for a shooter, he said, at that level you're not a helper, you're part of one organism. Rook saw everything she saw through his own glass at the same instant. He did the same math, felt the same wind, lived the same 40 seconds. When she didn't take the bad shot, when she waited past all reason, he was lying right next to her with his heart going through the rock, begging her to shoot, sure she was throwing it all away. And then she sent it in the lull, and 9 seconds later it was done, and Rook. Holly stopped, his jaw worked. Rook told me once, he said. Years after, drunk, the only time I ever saw him drunk. He said, Chief, I begged her to take the bad one. I was wrong and she was right, and if she'd listened to me, everybody who died setting it up would have died for nothing. He said, I'm supposed to be her partner, and in the most important 40 seconds of both our lives, I was the weak one, and she was the strong one. And I will never, ever talk about that day, because every time I do I have to feel that I almost ruined the best thing I ever saw a person do. Hollis looked at me. That's why they go silent, he said. It's not just secrecy, it's reverence. And it's shame, the good kind, the kind that comes from being in the presence of somebody better than you at the moment it mattered most. Those men didn't go quiet because they were ordered to. They went quiet because there are no words big enough and they knew it. You don't make small talk about the holiest thing you ever witnessed. You just carry it, quiet, like she taught them. Like she did her whole life, alone, until she set one piece of it down on your boat. I asked him then, the question I'd been carrying for 14 months. What happened to them out there, in the raft, 3 days, how'd they end up adrift in the middle of the ocean to begin with? Hollis nodded slow, like he'd been waiting for it. Different operation, he said. Years after the shot. Maritime thing, I can tell you that much because the cover story was a sailing accident anyway, and that's close enough. Their insertion went wrong. Hard. They lost their boat, lost their comms, lost 2 more people that night, brothers gone into the black water and never found. The 3 of them got into that raft with what they could grab, and that was it. No beacon that worked. No way to call. Just the 3 of them and the ocean and a fever coming up in Rook's shoulder, and the math. And she was always doing the math. The math said they had maybe 4 days before the heat in him killed him, and the shipping lanes were a long way off, and the odds were very bad. 3 days, I said. We found them on the third day. You found them, Holly said, about 12 hours before Rook would have died, maybe less. I felt that land in my chest, like a stone going into still water. And you want to know the thing she did out there, Holly said. The thing that's so like her it makes me crazy. Vasquez told me later. 3 days adrift, dying of thirst, dying of exposure, watching her teammate rot in front of her, and she ran the raft like a mission. Water rationed to the milliliter. Watches set, somebody always awake, always scanning, even when there was nothing to scan for, because the discipline was the only thing keeping them human. She made Vasquez talk about his kids every few hours to keep his head on. She kept Rook's wound clean with seawater even though it was agony, because clean and agony beats dirty and dead. And she never, not once, Vasquez swore to me, she never let either of them see her afraid. 3 days, the same stillness. The same map in her head, except now the map was how do I keep these 2 men alive, and she ran it the way she ran the wind across that valley. Cold, patient, total. He smiled, finally, and this time there was something almost like joy in it under the grief. That's why she sat up in the raft, he said. When you found her, you said she was the only one sitting up, calling out vessel, 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 steady, not screaming. Yeah, I said, how'd you? Because she was on watch, Holly said simply. She'd been on watch for 3 days. She wasn't going to stop being on watch just because she was dying. And when your boat came over the horizon, she didn't scream and she didn't cry and she didn't fall apart. She did the only thing she's ever known how to do. She handled it. She reported the contact vessel. She got her men recovered first. And only after she knew they were safe, only then, did she let herself close her eyes. You saw it. You told me. You said something went out of her shoulders. Like a guard going off duty, I said. That's exactly what I thought, right then, a guard going off duty. Holly's raised his glass to me. His eyes were wet again, and he didn't bother hiding it now. You saw her true, Captain, he said. First try. Most people never did her whole life. You saw her on the worst day of her life, and you saw exactly what she was. And what was that? I said. The watch, Holly said. She was the watch. The one who stays awake so everybody else can sleep. The one who carries the thing so nobody else has to. The one who does the impossible quiet shot in the dark and then goes home and says, fine, Mom, just training. There's a few of them in every generation. You don't get to know their names. You're just alive because they existed and you never find out. He drank. And one of them, he said, told a fisherman her call sign in the dark because she didn't want to disappear. So now there's 2 of us who'll remember she was real, you and me. And when I go, he tapped the bar, there's you. We sat there until the bar closed. Before we left, I asked him the last thing, the thing I needed to know and was afraid to. Holly's, I said, where is she now, Ren, after the raft, is she? And Holly's got quiet one more time, the longest quiet of the night. And then he told me. And that's where it ends. That's part 5, the part I almost can't say out loud even now. Where is she now? Holly's turned my question over for a long time. The bartender had started stacking chairs. The TV was off. It was just the 2 of us and a couple of empty glasses and that old quiet that comes into a bar at the end of the night, when everybody's said the real things and there's nothing left to do but go home. She made it, he said. I let out a breath I think I'd been holding since 14 months ago. Rook lived, Holly's went on. The shoulder almost took him, but it didn't. They put him back together and he's got a farm now of all things, goats. Can you picture it, a man like that, goats? Vasquez stayed in another couple years, then got out, does some kind of security work, has those kids he talked about in the raft. They're grown now. He coaches one of their soccer teams. Yells at referees like a normal idiot. You'd never know. And Ren. Holly smiled, and it was a soft smile, a tired one. She got out too, he said. After the raft. That was the one, I think. The thing that finally let her stop. Some people need permission to put it down, and almost dying out there with her 2 men was the closest she ever came to giving it to herself. She always said she'd know when it was time. She knew. What's she do now? Teaches, Holly said. Not shooting, sailing. She runs a little program down on the coast somewhere, takes kids out who have never seen the ocean, kids from hard places, foster kids, kids nobody's ever taught anything good. Teaches them to read the wind. He laughed soft. You believe that? Spent her whole life reading the wind to do the hardest thing a person can do, and now she reads the wind to a bunch of 12-year-olds and tells them which way to point the boat. She told me once it was the first job she'd ever had where she could actually tell people what she did all day. I sat with that for a while. She ever say anything, I asked, about the boat, about us, after? Holly's looked at me. She's the one who sent the money, he said. The case you found behind the freezer, that was supposed to be her co's people, the official thing, for the inconvenience, but the amount, that wasn't them. They'd have left you a quarter of that. She made them add the rest, out of her own pocket, near as I can tell, and she made them leave that phone number. He nodded at me. You still have the number? Yeah, I said. Never called it. Figured it'd ring through to somebody in black who'd ask me a lot of questions. It won't, Holly said. It's hers. It's been hers the whole time. She left you a way to reach her, Captain. She just left it up to you whether you ever would. That's very, very her. She'd never call you. That'd be her asking for something, and she's never in her life asked anybody for a thing. But she left the door open and put the handle on your side. I stared at him. Call her, Holly said. Tell her you remembered, that's all. She'll know what it means. Trust me. There's a woman out there who spent her whole life sure that everything she ever did was going to vanish the second she did. You're proof it didn't. You go ahead and be that proof, son, before you're as old as me and it's too late. I want to tell you I called the next morning. I didn't. I'm a coward in some ways, the small ways, the ways that don't show up at sea but show up plenty on land. It took me 3 weeks. I'd take the card out and look at it and put it back. My wife asked me what I kept staring at, and I told her old fishing stuff. Another lie. I've told a lot of them for that woman. But one evening I was out on my own dock late, the water all gone to glass the way it does, and I don't know what got into me. I took out my phone and I dialed the number on the card. It rang twice. And a voice, that voice, sandpaper smoothed out now, healed up but unmistakable, said, "This is Wren." I didn't say anything for a second. I almost couldn't. "It's the fishing boat," I finally got out. "It's Pano from the—" "I know who it is," she said. And I heard it, right there in those 4 words. I heard her sit up. I heard the smile come into it. I heard 14 months of her wondering whether the one witness, the one person she'd let pass the wall, would ever prove she'd been real, and finding out on a quiet evening that he had. I remembered, I said, stupid. It was all I had. I wanted you to know. I never forgot a word of it. I remembered. There was a long quiet on the line. The good kind. 2 people 3 states apart, both standing near the water probably, both looking at the same dark. "Thank you, Captain," she said, and her voice did the thing it had done on the deck, the thing where something goes out of the shoulders, a guard going off duty. You have no idea what that— She stopped, steadied. She was always steadying. "How's the boat?" "Floating," I said. "How are the kids? Holly said you teach kids to sail." "Holly's talks too much," she said, but you could hear she was glad. "They're terrible, they're wonderful. One of them capsized us twice today on purpose. I led her, the little maniac. A breath. Best job I ever had." We talked for an hour, about nothing. About wind and tides and a girl who capsized boats on purpose. Not once did either of us say the number. We didn't need to. It was in the room with both of us the whole time, the way the dead are in the room at a good wake, and we just let it sit there, real and remembered. Before we hung up, she said, "You're the only one outside the wall, you know, still. After all of it, just you." "I know," I said. "Don't make me regret it," she said. "Same as the deck." And I could hear she was teasing now, that she didn't mean it the same way at all. "I'm a great liar," I said, "just not with you." She laughed. That short, rough bark. And then she said good night, and the line went quiet, and I stood on my dock for a long time after, looking at the water. So that's it, that's the whole thing. People ask me sometimes, when I let a little of it slip after too many drinks, they ask me what the lesson is. Like there's a lesson. Like you pull 3 half-dead operators out of the ocean, and the universe owes you a moral at the end. I don't think there's a lesson. I think there's just this. There are people walking around among us. You've passed them, in airports, in grocery stores, at your sister's wedding, asking you what you do. Who have done things so far past the edge of what you think a person can do that you wouldn't believe it if they told you, which is exactly why they never will. They did the impossible quiet thing in the dark, and then they came home and said fine, just training, and they smiled, and they carried it, all of it, every stone alone, because that's the job, and the job doesn't end when the shooting does. The job is the silence. The job is carrying the thing so the rest of us never have to know it was carried. And every once in a long while, one of them sets a piece of it down in front of you, in the dark, half dying, trusting you to remember. And when that happens, friend, you remember. You remember every word. Because somewhere out there right now, on water gone to glass, there's a small woman teaching a foster kid which way the wind is going. A woman who did the greatest thing I'll ever know about and will never get a single line of credit for it as long as she lives. And the only record of it that exists anywhere on this earth is in the heads of a few silent men with goat farms and soccer practices. And in the memory of one old fisherman who never forgot and never will. That's her record. That's the only one she's got. I'm it. And I'll carry it till the water takes me.